Chapter 44-55. Yi-Huan looked at him and said, "Isn't it fair to exchange a child for Yi-Huan?" At this moment, Qin Mo's expression was no longer one of anger, but one of shock and anger. "What about you? What are you going to do? Have you ever thought about whether the result will be the same if you can't keep the child?" Yi-Huan leaned on the sofa tiredly and said in a weak voice, "Qin Mo, I'm not as rational as you. I just want Yi-Huan to be happy. She's very happy." Qin Mo stared into her eyes and said, "Yi-Huan is not as weak as you think. She likes her current life and she's just acting coquettishly. Have you forgotten that her surname is Qin? None of the children of the Qin family are weak." Yi-Huan closed her eyes and did not speak again. Qin Mo knew that she was refusing to communicate with him. He did not say anything else and just reached out to touch her forehead. After a while, he said, "Eat something before you sleep. I don't have to work and can take care of Yi-Huan." Whether she was willing or not, he went downstairs and brought her breakfast. It was Western style and very simple. He watched her eat before leaving. Yi-Huan lay down again and could not fall asleep, even though the sofa was more comfortable than the bed. They had also done it on this sofa. Yi-Huan felt a little regretful, as if she had been bitten by a dog. He didn't want it, but she had to give it to him. She looked at her phone. It was almost 10 o'clock. She decided not to sleep anymore. She wanted to daydream or something. Later, she called Su Cheng. Su Cheng was worried about her and asked her how she was. Yi-Huan's body was wrapped in the quilt and her voice was a little soft. "I'm fine." Su Cheng hesitated for a moment and said, "Yi-Huan, I want to ask you something." Yi-Huan nodded. Then, Su Cheng said, "Is your body unable to get pregnant again?" This was what Qin Mo had told Kim yesterday. Qin Mo's intention was simple. He wanted to let the He family's parents know that Yi-Huan was a good woman, but if she married someone else, her marriage wouldn't last long. Especially since the Bai family was also rich. Needless to say, this had a huge impact on Su Cheng. Hearing her question, Yi-Huan nodded softly. "Yes, I accidentally miscarried a child, so I'm used to miscarrying." "How could that be?" Su Cheng was stunned. Then, she said, "Why didn't you tell us?" Her heart ached terribly, but Yi-Huan just said indifferently, "Mom, it's all in the past. I also forgot." At that moment, Su Cheng finally understood why Yi-Huan couldn't let go of Qin Mo. She had always been unwilling to truly reconcile with Qin Mo. There was a layer of separation between the two children. She carefully thought about the days when Yi-Huan didn't come home often. It was probably when Qin Mo and King Entertainment Su Ilio were rumored to be together. It was no wonder that Yi-Huan couldn't let go. If it were her, she wouldn't be able to let go either. Su Cheng felt a little sad, an indescribable feeling. In the end, she sighed softly. "Follow your heart. Don't close it off." Yi-Huan didn't say anything and just hung up slowly. Actually, as a mother, Su Cheng was indeed selfish. Given Yi-Huan's current situation, it would be fine if she married an ordinary man. But if she married into a rich family, she wouldn't have a good life. Qin Mo was really frightening and ruthless. As for Su Cheng, she had indeed compromised. On the other side, Yi-Huan hung up the phone. She wasn't stupid and knew that it was Qin Mo's intention. He left her with nowhere to run and nowhere to go. She had to face reality. That was all. Chapter 44-56. After the call, Yi-Huan couldn't fall asleep at all. She got out of bed and didn't put on any clothes. It was warm in the study anyway. She had never been to this villa before. Everything was foreign and yet familiar. Because the renovation was done according to Qin Mo's preferences, especially the study, she was familiar with it. The master bedroom was a little feminine, which was what Huan liked. At this moment, she was in the dark study. Her fingers gently stroked the wooden desk and then she walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. She pulled open the curtains and the sunlight shone in, dazzling her eyes. Huan didn't expect that it would be sunny outside. She immediately shielded her eyes and only moved her fingers away after she got used to it. In the courtyard, it was still completely white, and Huan and Qin Mo were building a snowman in that vast expanse of white. Huan wore a set of pink clothes and a pair of white waterproof boots. Qin Mo also wore a cotton-padded jacket and a pair of boots similar to Huan's. One big and one small, they stood out in the white. Huan looked at Huan's little face and smiled happily. Just as Qin Mo said, Huan was very happy. But the only one who was unhappy was Huan herself. She clenched her fists. She understood that Huan was very happy now. Being the successor of King Entertainment was not a happy thing. She knew about the pain Qin Mo went through when he was young. At that time, she felt that she didn't want to be with him because he always looked sullen and unhappy. Huan looked at them quietly, completely forgetting that she wasn't wearing shoes or a coat. She only had Qin Mo's shirt on. Later, her eyes got a little tired and she looked away. She didn't know that Qin Mo wasn't downstairs. The study door was pushed open, breaking the silence in the room. Qin Mo stood at the door and asked softly, "Aren't you cold wearing this?" Huan turned to look at him. Qin Mo took off his coat, walked towards her, and hugged her from behind. "Is it warm?" "You're very cold," Huan whispered. Then he laughed, as if all the unhappiness of the morning had been forgotten, as if he were in a good mood again. He lowered his head and kissed her. Huan wanted to hide, but she couldn't. He kissed her for a long time and said in a hoarse voice, "You wearing my shirt is a sin in itself. No man can stand it, However, he still let her go. He hugged her and let her step on his feet, nestled in his arms, and looked at Huan together. He said, "Huan wants to make a chinchilla, and one with baby chinchillas in its stomach. I got her 4. Let's see if they look alike later." Huan pursed her lips. "She's happy, isn't she?" "Yes," he kissed her again. Huan was a little bitter. She turned around from his arms and looked up at him. "Why don't you let her be happy every day? Girls should grow up happily." Qin Mo's eyes darkened a little. "You still can't bear to let her go?" "Of course not. She's happy now, but it doesn't mean she'll be happy in the future. Qin Mo, don't think I don't know that you've already chosen her husband, Yi Xiangnan, right? Not only did you make her the successor, but you also made her choose her future at such a young age." Huan couldn't accept it. Chapter 44-57. He smiled faintly, but there was a hint of bitterness in it. Huan lowered her eyes, unwilling to listen to these words. To her, Qin Mo's love was a cage. She had nowhere to escape. Now, even Huan couldn't escape. Huan didn't know if this was their fate or their sin. Finally, she broke free from his embrace. "I want to rest." Qin Mo didn't stop her. He quietly let her slip away in his arms. Huan wanted to put on her clothes, but she found that her clothes were nowhere to be found. She bit her lower lip. "Qin Mo, where are my clothes?" He stood by the window. The gloomy expression on his face dissipated, and he smiled faintly. "Did you tear them? Did you forget?" Huan was furious. She glared at him and opened the door to go back to the bedroom. But the moment she opened the door, she saw Huan standing at the door. Little Yi Huan was still wearing the same clothes. She looked at Yi Huan, her mouth opened wide. After a long time, she said, "Mommy, aren't you cold?" Yi Huan froze for a moment. Little Yi Huan came over and touched her. "Mommy's legs are so white." Yi Huan, Qin Mo walked over and picked up little Yi Huan. He said to Yi Huan, "Her surname is Qin, right?" Yi Huan rolled her eyes at him and walked toward the master bedroom. Yi Huan asked softly behind her, "Why is Mommy wearing Daddy's shirt? Isn't she cold?" Qin Mo held back his laughter. Yi Huan turned her head. "Qin Yi Huan, you can shut up now. Mommy is fierce to me." Little Yi Huan wailed and started to cry. She was crying so hard that she was really sad. Yi Huan felt helpless. Qin Mo didn't comfort her. He deliberately let little Yi Huan cry like this. "Qin Mo, coax her," Yi Huan couldn't help but say. Qin Mo glanced at her, then walked over with Yi Huan in his arms and stuffed the little fellow into her arms. "Don't you care about her very much? Coax her." Yi Huan glared at him. Qin Mo had already left. She still wanted to say something, but the little fellow in her arms asked, "Mommy, can I watch you change your clothes? I'll forgive you if you let me." Yi Huan couldn't bring himself to harden his heart against this little fellow, so he could only agree. The little boy's voice rang out in the changing room. "Mommy, wear something thicker. If you wear something thicker, you can go downstairs with me to make a snowman." "Oh," Yi Huan replied and changed into a thick cotton coat. When she went downstairs, Qin Mo brought her a pair of Uggs and a scarf for her. He was still wearing a sweater and looked like he had no intention of going out. "I'll be back in half an hour." He picked up a business magazine as if to read it in the living room. Moreover, he looked a little tired. He had been busy all night last night and was woken up by Yi Huan early in the morning. Little Yi Huan was under the quilt at that time, and later, he put on Yi Huan's shirt for her, and Yi Huan was carried out of the door by him. The price was to accompany her to make a snowman, no, a chinchilla. Yi Huan wore thick clothes, but her body was too weak to withstand the cold outside. After a while, her little face turned red. But Yi Huan was sensible enough to drag her back, and then said to Qin Mo, "Daddy, Mommy seems to have caught a cold. Let her hear it." Although Qin Mo was a little worried, he still asked with some mischief, "How do I hear it?" Little Yi Huan put her little head over Yi Huan's chest. "Listen to it like this. All doctors listen to it like this." Chapter 44-58. Qin Mo watched as Yi Huan leaned over and smiled faintly. He then looked at Yi Huan. Yi Huan was speechless. She took Yi Huan down and said, "Mommy is fine." Yi Huan said, "Mommy's heart is beating so fast." Qin Mo smiled faintly at first. Then, his gaze changed. He walked over and held Yi Huan's hand. He frowned and said, "Do you have a fever?" Yi Huan shook her head. She wanted to say no, but her face was really pale. There was an abnormal tinge of red in her pale face. Qin Mo immediately carried her upstairs. He walked in a hurry, and Yi Huan immediately wrapped her arms around his neck. She shook her head. "Qin Mo, I'm fine. It's a little hot." His voice was low. "Be good, HM." As he said that, he reached out a hand and touched her face gently. "I shouldn't have let you go outside. Look at how weak you are." Thinking about how he had bullied such a weak thing last night, his face was a little hot. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart, so, he lowered his head and pressed his forehead against her face gently. It was as if he was kissing her. Yi Huan followed behind. she exclaimed and covered her little face. Daddy looks very different. He seems to love mommy very much. Chin Mo carried Hehuan to the bed in the master bedroom. He carefully took off her coat and put it under the blanket. He touched her forehead and said gently, "I'll call the doctor." It had only been a while, but her face had become even redder. Yi-Huan looked at her father worriedly. Chin Mo patted her little head. "Mommy is fine." She was fine. Something was wrong. After the doctor came over, he examined Hehuan and said with a serious expression, "It's acute pneumonia. It's best that she be admitted to the hospital." He then looked at Hehuan. "And it's contagious. There are children at home." Chin Mo looked at the time and rejected the idea. "I'll take in 4 drip at home." It was the Lunar New Year in a few days. He didn't want Hehuan to spend it in the hospital, and Hehuan only had 10 days off. Chin Mo's decision made everyone in the villa busy. Disinfection was the main task, and Hehuan was also quarantined. She was allowed to wear a mask and stay with Hehuan for 2 hours a day. Moreover, the little girl had to sleep in the children's room, and President Chin could occupy his wife at night. Yi-Huan immediately suspected that her father was like this because he wanted to dominate her mother. As the new year approached, Yi-Huan fell sick again, and the villa slowly became lively. Needless to say, Su Cheng was worried about Yi-Huan's health. Even though the weather was bad, she still came over every day to give Yi-Huan soup, warmth, and motherly love. Thus, Yi-Huan's mood was better. Even Yi Liangqiu and Qin Anlin came over to see Hehuan. Although the atmosphere was a little strange, Hehuan still got up to greet them. In the living room of the master bedroom, they were polite and a little unfamiliar. After all, they couldn't go back. Yi Liangqiu sighed in her heart. She had watched Hehuan grow up. In some ways, Chin Mo had let Hehuan down, and she had hurt the child's heart. She had clearly expressed her stance on Su Ilio's matter. Now, she already knew that Chin Mo and Hehuan had registered their marriage again. For Qin Anlin and Yi Liangqiu, this wasn't a shock. They only sighed. After all, Hehuan was still the same person. It was easy to get back together, but it was difficult to be like before. Chapter 44-59. It seemed more like Chin Mo's wishful thinking. Especially after seeing Hehuan's attitude, Yi Liangqiu was even more certain. She asked Hehuan to have a good rest. She went downstairs and chatted with Qin Anlin and Qin Mo for a while. As for Hehuan's problem, Qin Mo answered her directly. He also said that Hehuan could not continue to have children. Yi Liangqiu frowned. Hehuan can't have children, but we can't let Hehuan suffer like this. We can't. Qin Anlin glanced at his wife. What else can we do? Qin Chen's son and Mu Yun's son both need heirs. If we have 2 children, won't we die of exhaustion? Therefore, it could only be Yi-Huan. Poor little Yi-Huan. Although Anlin's father felt sorry for her, he still said as ruthlessly as a father, Yi-Huan is not bad. I think she is not bad, Yi Liangqiu almost cursed out loud. Not bad my ass. But she held it in. When they got into the car, she was naturally scolded by her pig-faced husband. Qin Anlin was also very good-tempered, so he just smiled. After scolding, Yi Liangqiu sighed. I think Hehuan has really changed a lot. She used to be so healthy and energetic. Did she become like this because of Qin Mo? Qin Anlin frowned. They are good to each other. Qin Mo has also lost a lot of weight. Why don't I think so? I think he seems to be very high-spirited. Yi Liangqiu said angrily, what's wrong with him? He does whatever he wants and treats his relationship like child's play. I don't even have the face to see Suilio now. Of course, Chin Anlan knew that his wife was not a good person, especially when it was Chin Mo who treated Suilio indifferently. His wife misunderstood and invited him home on an important day. But now, Chin Mo suddenly married He Huan, which made her seem like a bad mother-in-law. At least, He Huan's current attitude was indifferent. Yi Liangqiu sighed. Anlan, I feel indescribable feelings when I look at He Huan now. I don't know how to get along with her. Chin Anlan hugged his wife. Alright, it's not like we're living together. Besides, the two of them probably haven't truly reconciled yet. If they did, they'd naturally be closer to us too, no? Chin Mo's current behavior is equivalent to forcibly kidnapping a woman. Yi Liangqiu looked at her husband. How can you talk about your son like that? She paused for a moment. Even if there is, it is inherited. She harumphed fiercely. Chin Anlan understood what she meant. He only smiled, and then sighed as if he had been startled by the past. So many years have passed in the blink of an eye. Liangqiu, we used to quarrel like this too, but no matter how much we quarreled, we couldn't bear to let go of each other's hands, right? Yi Liangqiu did not say anything. Who said it wasn't? In the villa, after sending off the guests, He Huan lay down to rest again. It was a quiet afternoon. The sunlight shone through the glass. The bedroom was very comfortable. The temperature and humidity were the best for the human body. She hadn't felt so comfortable in a long time. After getting married and giving birth to Yi Huan, she had a family. However, she had been wandering abroad for many years. She was very happy at that time. She only felt a little sad when she returned to China because Chin Mo was here. She did not understand why Chin Mo was not willing to let go of her. Obviously, they were not happy, were they not? Chin Mo coaxed Yi Huan and went into the master bedroom. Yi Huan was sleeping. She had fallen asleep. He stood there and looked at her quietly. Chapter 44-60. Of course, she didn't gain weight after her illness, and there were only 2 or 3 days left until the new year. She was almost fully recovered, but her body was still very weak. Her little face was thin and sharp, and it was easily hidden by her black hair. Chin Mo reached out and held her wrist gently. There were a few punctures from the 4 drips she had been receiving for the past few days, and there was a faint bruise on the back of her fair hand. It was heartbreaking to see it. His heart ached for her, and he lay down beside her with his clothes on. After a while, it warmed up and he reached out to pull the fragile little thing into his arms. He Huan woke up for a moment, but she quickly closed her eyes and rested her little face in his arms. Probably because it was warm, she didn't refuse. Chin Mo's eyes darkened. He reached out and wrapped one of her hands around his waist. He put the other hand on her back and patted her gently, coaxing her to sleep as if he was coaxing her. He Huan still woke up, but she didn't move. After lying there for a while, she asked him softly, Chin Mo, you're not happy, are you? His voice was very gentle, and he reached out to touch her little head. Why aren't you sleeping? He Huan didn't say anything. Did I disturb you? His voice became even gentler. He Huan said no. And he didn't answer her question. It was only when He Huan was about to fall asleep that he said in a very low voice, Actually, it's very easy to make me happy, He Huan. It's just that you don't want to. He Huan's fingers tightened on his sweater, and she didn't say anything. Then, her breathing became even, and she must have fallen asleep. Chin Mo was a little disappointed. He lowered his head and looked at her for a long time. Finally, he kissed her, and his voice was hoarse. He Huan, I'm not as unhappy as you think I am. At least she was still by his side. She was the one who was really unhappy. There was an indescribable emptiness in his heart. Because he couldn't make her happy. Even when they were husband and wife, she wasn't the same as before. This was a huge blow to a man. Of course, he also knew that He Huan didn't do it on purpose. It was just her instinctive reaction. In the past, their relationship was also very tense, but there was no problem in this aspect. Besides, they rarely met once or twice a year, and they only got together for a few days. But now, he really felt that He Huan was not enthusiastic about this matter. Qin Mo was a man less than 40 years old. Of course, he was a little, and what he minded the most was her attitude. She was still unwilling to let go of the knot in her heart. No matter how good he was to her, she still could not let go. Sometimes, Qin Mo wondered if they would be like this for the rest of their lives. However, he was unwilling to give up. He wanted to warm her up, but every time he got close to her, he would be frozen. In the past, he might have. But this time, he would not let go. This time, if he let go, she would leave completely. He was very clear in his heart. He lowered his head and kissed her. His voice was hoarse. He Huan, we will always be together. These words, however, seemed to be said to himself. He Huan, on the other hand, was still sleeping quietly, looking carefree. But he was willing to spoil her. He Huan slept until night fell. Of course, Qin Mo couldn't stay by her side the whole time. He had to take care of Yi Huan. There was only a sliver of moonlight in the master bedroom. He Huan woke up in the silver light. She sat up, and her back was drenched in sweat. My mobile phone remembers to bring wonderful novels to you. Chapter 44-61. She was stunned for a long time before she got up and walked to the French window, looking at the night outside. The heavy wooden door of the bedroom was pushed open, and Yi Huan came in. A small and fat one, wearing a beautiful floral dress, hopped over to him. She wanted to cover Mama's eyes from behind, but her short legs couldn't reach, so she could only give up. In the end, she hugged Mama's legs and said coquettishly, "Guess who I am?" He Huan's gloomy mood suddenly became much better. She lowered her head and said softly, "Let me guess, okay? You want to guess Snow White, Cinderella?" Little Yi Huan continued to play happily. Yi Huan laughed and bent down to pick up the little fellow. But Yi Huan was afraid that she would be tired, so she took a step back and said with a smile, "Mommy asked me to see if you are awake. If you are, we can have dinner." Yi Huan was stunned. "I'll go downstairs to eat." "That's what Daddy said." Little Yi Huan continued to say with a smile. Yi Huan lowered her eyes. She said yes, then put on a coat and went downstairs. Unexpectedly, not only Qin Mo, but also Yi Mubai, Wen Yuan and his wife, as well as their son Yi Xiangnan, were there. It was more like a family gathering. Yi Huan felt that her clothes were not formal enough, so she stood on the stairs and said softly, "I'm going to change." Qin Mo said no, and Wen Yuan also said that she should be more comfortable when she was sick, so Yi Huan had to go downstairs for her. Tonight's dinner was very sumptuous. There were even silver candles on the table, and the dishes didn't seem to be made by the chefs at home, but by a 5-star chef himself. At this time, Qin Mo was sitting in the main seat, and the seat next to him was empty. The 3 members of the Yi family were sitting on the other side. When Yi Huan went over, little Yi Huan pulled out a chair for her mother first. "Sit down, Mommy." Yi Huan smiled slightly, and little Yi Huan had already sat next to her, making a good seat. When Yuan said, "We knew you were sick, but we didn't want to disturb you." Qin Mo said you were much better today, so we brought Xiangnan over to take a look. Xiangnan really likes Yi Huan. Yi Huan didn't know if this was a hint or a normal sentence. She looked at Yi Huan. Yi Huan's little face was very innocent, while Yi Xiangnan was smiling slightly, looking like a little adult. Yi Huan recalled that Xiangnan was about 10 years old, and there was a little girl in the Yi family, Yi Hui, who was only 3 or 4 years old. She asked softly, "Why didn't you bring Yi Hui?" "She's with Grandma, and so is Bai Anan," Wen Yuan said with a smile. Su Fu and Hao Yun had never had children, so they liked the two young ladies, Bai Anan and Yi Hui, very much. They would often bring them to spend weekends together. At first, Wen Yuan felt that they were bothering them, but Yi Mubai and Yi Mulan felt that they were especially nice. Bai Shuili and Wen Yuan didn't know about it at first, but later on, they found out about their dark thoughts. Sure enough, men were all bad. After saying that, Wen Yuan looked at Yi Mubai. Mr. Yi didn't feel pressured by his wife's gaze. He smiled lightly and said, "I'll take them back in 2 days." Wen Yuan pretended that he didn't hear it. Anyway, it didn't matter what he said. Yi Mubai looked at his wife again and lowered his voice. "You're usually not in a hurry. Why do you want to be a good mother now?" Wen Yuan glared at him, but he was afraid that others could see it, so he still looked very normal. Yi Huan could see that all men were the same, including Qin Mo, who sent Yi Huan to that kind of school. Maybe he had the same idea. Chapter 4462. However, Yi Huan didn't say anything, nor did she make eye contact with Qin Mo. Everything was indifferent. On the other hand, Qin Mo's gaze fell on Yi Huan's face for a long time with a meaningful look. The Yi couple saw it but pretended not to see it. After dinner, the adults decided to have a cup of coffee, while the two children sat on the enclosed balcony to watch the snow, the stars, and the moon. Because of Qin Chen, Qin Mo also had the best coffee machine and coffee. He made 3 cups, but Yi Huan didn't. She looked at him. Qin Mo put a cup of hot fruit tea in her hand. "Drink this." Yi Huan took it silently and didn't say anything else. Then, the men talked about men's topics, while Wen Yuan and Yi Huan talked about women's secrets in a corner. Wen Yuan hesitated for a moment and asked softly, "How is your relationship now?" Yi Huan held the hot fruit tea and smiled faintly. "As you can see, it's neither good nor bad." Wen Yuan hesitated for a moment and asked, "What's your plan?" She was a woman and she understood women. She looked at Yi Huan and knew that she didn't want to be with her for a long time. So she was a little worried. After all, Wen Yuan wasn't so stupid that he couldn't see the promise between Yi Mubai and Qin Mo, Xiangnan and Yi Huan. Her reaction wasn't as strong as Yi Huan's. She just felt that the children were still young. Even if the adults had their own ideas, it didn't matter. However, it didn't rule out that Xiangnan and Yi Huan would be together in the future, so she naturally had to care more about Yi Huan. Yi Huan smiled faintly. "I haven't thought about the future yet." Wen Yuan had never thought that Yi Huan was a weak person. On the contrary, Yi Huan had a strong personality. She was only temporarily suppressing her weakness, so she just smiled and changed the topic. "When will the new movie be released? Don't forget to invite us for the premiere." "Of course." Yi Huan smiled. "It's on 214. The date was set by Qin Mo. It was strange for him to do it, but after she got sick, many things in Twin were taken care of by him. Yi Huan accepted it gladly. The two women chatted for a long time. On the balcony on the 2nd floor, the two children were sitting on the sofa, wrapped in warm wool blankets, watching the stars outside. Yi Huan was actually a little sleepy. Her eyelids were blinking so much that they were about to fall off, but she forced herself to stay awake. Today was the first time that Brother Xiangnan came to her home. Brother Xiangnan was very handsome. Little Yi Huan couldn't help but secretly kiss big brother Xiangnan. Then, he looked up at the stars with a serious face, his eyelids drooping as he asked in a daze, "What kind of girl does big brother Xiangnan like?" A faint smile appeared at the corner of Yi Xiangnan's mouth. Aunt Qin Qin. Yi Huan felt that her aunt was very handsome. So brother Xiangnan liked girls who were like boys. Yi Huan's mouth was wide open, and she didn't close it for a long time. Then, she said, "Oh." Her little face tilted on Yi Xiangnan's shoulder, and she fell asleep. "Hey!" Xiangnan turned his head, wanting to wake her up. He wanted to tell her that he liked girls like Aunt Qin Qin, but in the future, he liked girls who were soft like a little sheep. But Yi Huan fell asleep. Before she fell asleep, she remembered Brother Xiangnan's hobbies. Brother Xiangnan liked girls like Aunt. Chapter 44-63. If Qin Chen were here, she would knock Qin Yi Huan hard to wake her up. Not many men liked this kind of girl. Lan Yu had a heavy taste. Only girls liked him. What kind of stupid things did this little fool do in the next 10 years? The balcony was warm, and outside, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse, indicating good weather tomorrow. When little Yi Huan woke up, it was midnight. The moonlight outside the window shone into the children's room, and it was dim. She opened her eyes and saw Qin Mo, so she called out, "Daddy." The little girl plunged into her father's arms. That little soft body smelled good, and it was very comfortable to hold. Qin Mo was wearing a set of black pajamas, holding his little daughter patiently. Yi Huan said in a daze, "Daddy, big brother Xiangnan is so handsome." Qin Mo smiled. "Really? Is he as handsome as Daddy? When big brother Xiangnan grows up, he will be more handsome than Daddy." Little Yi Huan lay on Qin Mo's chest, drooling all over the ground, making her father's chest wet and hot, and it was very uncomfortable. Qin Mo lowered his head and smiled. He was still drooling, so how would he know whether a man was handsome or not? However, Yi Xiangnan was indeed not bad. As a father, he naturally had to be satisfied to have some kind of tacit understanding. In the quiet night, little Yi Huan secretly made up her mind. She wanted to become the person that big brother Xiangnan liked. So the next morning, Yi Huan didn't see Yi Huan early in the morning. Later, when she went to the children's room, she found out that the little girl was busy. A big box came from nowhere, and Qin Yi Huan was neatly folding her beautiful little dresses, and they were really folded like tofu. This skill made Yi Huan look at her in a new light. Yi Huan coughed lightly. "Yi Huan, what are you doing?" Qin Yi Huan's short legs were busy working as she replied in a childish voice, "Mommy, I want to donate all of these to the children in the mountainous areas." Yi Huan walked over, squatted down beside the suitcase, and touched the clothes. "What about you?" Little Yi Huan made a very handsome pose. "From now on, I will wear a suit and tie like Aunt Qin Qin. I will be a handsome person." Yi Huan smiled. She was a very open-minded mother. Yi Huan could do whatever she wanted. However, she still said, the children in the mountainous areas might not be able to wear such gorgeous dresses. "Why don't we buy some cotton clothes, books and toys and send them over? Why can't I wear them?" Little Yi Huan pouted. "These dresses are beautiful." Yi Huan couldn't tell her that these clothes, which were worth tens of thousands of yuan, really didn't need to be worn in the mountainous area. Instead, she said tactfully, because it's very cold in the mountainous area, and those young friends don't have heating in their homes. "Your little skirt won't keep them warm, so it's better for us to buy them cotton-padded clothes, right? Little Yi-Hwan nodded. Then what about these clothes? We can go on Idle Fish and sell these clothes. Then, we can buy new clothes, right? The mother quickly and happily made a decision. Therefore, little Yi-Hwan also happily agreed, and the mother and daughter immediately went to work. Yi-Hwan hung up little Yi-Hwan's clothes for a photo and went on Idle Fish. Because they were worn clothes, they were only priced at a few hundred to 1,000 yuan, and they were all from first-tier international brands. She received a lot of orders in the afternoon. Her phone rang from time to time. By noon, all the clothes in the wardrobe were sold out, and Yi-Hwan had become a gold medal seller. Chapter 44-64. They were very busy in the afternoon. They had to pack and mail the clothes. In the end, Qin Mo helped. President Qin did not reprimand them for their unconventional squandering. Instead, he packed the clothes for them and sent them out. Just like that, the day passed. They received a total of more than 100,000 yuan. President Qin thought to himself. Yi-Hwan's clothes were worth at least 2 million yuan. What a spendthrift. However, President Qin's family was very rich. He could afford to lose money like this every day, as long as Yi-Hwan was happy. After he was done, he asked his secretary to buy winter clothes and some other supplies to support the mountainous area. Of course, more than 100,000 yuan was not enough. President Qin spent 5 million yuan from his own pocket to load 10 trucks full of supplies for the mountainous area. He got someone trustworthy to follow them from start to finish. Yi-Hwan stared at the screen. Qin Mo was standing behind the back of the chair behind her, his hands on her shoulders. Do you believe me now? Are you relieved? Yi-Hwan nodded. Then, she raised her head again. Why in my name? Qin Mo smiled. Yi-Hwan added, you're the one who paid for it. A businessman's reputation is not worth that much. It's different for a director. Qin Mo smiled faintly. Then, he walked to the sofa and sat down. He wanted to light a cigarette but decided against it. He looked at Yi-Hwan and said in a low voice, it might be useful in the future. Yi-Hwan sat in front of the computer in the study. Then, she said in a low voice, I don't like it. Qin Mo smiled faintly. You don't like it, but sometimes you will be useful. It's common in the entertainment industry to support the strong and step on the weak. You have to learn to protect yourself. In the past, she had been so successful. She thought it was because she was CEO Qin's wife. But it was never because of her talent. She was Qin Mo's wife, so no one dared to step on her. He didn't want to tell her all this. But now, he wanted to tell her to protect herself. Just like how he didn't want Yi-Hwan to grow up to be naive and sweet, the most beautiful love in the world was when both sides were equally matched. Qin Mo looked at his wife. Yi-Hwan and Yi-Hwan were like this because she was talented. And she was beautiful. He had never been a man who thought appearance was unimportant. He liked every aspect of Yi-Hwan, and sometimes, he found her abhorrent. This abhorrent side of her was deeply attracted to him. Yi-Hwan didn't say anything and seemed to be thinking about something. Qin Mo changed the topic and said in a low voice, I'm more curious about why Yi-Hwan suddenly wants to sell all the clothes in the house. Ah, Yi-Hwan exclaimed. She looked confused for a moment, but she quickly recovered and smiled faintly. It's because she wants to be like Qin Qin. Qin Qin. As the father of his youngest daughter, Qin Mo was someone who allowed his youngest daughter to become a successful businesswoman, but to wear a shirt, a crew cut, and a tie like Qin Qin, he couldn't accept it. Finally, President Qin looked at the child's mother. She must have long hair or shoulder length. Anyway, she must look at least like a woman. He didn't want to be asked, "President Qin, how old is your son? He's so handsome, and does he have a girlfriend?" President Qin thought it was enough just thinking about it. Huan sat on the computer chair and smiled faintly. "I'll try to communicate with her." Chapter 4465. Huan looked at him. Qin Mo smiled. "You're willing to talk to me about Huan's growth? Does that mean we've made up, huh?" Huan was stunned. "Huh? Mrs. Qin, you've been neglecting me for a long time. Don't you feel it? Regarding the boat scene, we can't even think about it now. Let's restrain ourselves with the male and female leads arc." Huan was startled by the sudden kiss. She didn't know what to do, but she didn't push him away. What she was most worried about was his sudden interest. It wasn't like this hadn't happened before. Qin Mo probably knew what she was worried about. He chuckled. "Are you afraid of me?" "No." Huan spoke quickly, so she seemed a little guilty. "Tomorrow night at King Entertainment, you're coming with me, huh?" Huan's body stiffened. One reason was because she was in his arms, and the other was because of what he said. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "I don't really want to go. You're President Qin's wife, and you're much better now. You won't feel cold even if you don't wear a gown." The next day, Qin Mo went to the company first. He said he would pick her up at 5 in the afternoon, as long as she was dressed appropriately. There was no need to be too formal. Huan was especially energetic that day. She felt a little strange. She had been a little tired the night before. She wanted to chat with Huan, but Huan only wanted to look cool in the mirror and imitate Qin Chen's every move. Huan leaned against the door and watched. She felt that Qin Mo would go crazy later, but it was good to leave some things for him to do. She walked in and squatted down to look at Huan. "Do you still want to go to school there?" "Yes, because there's Brother Xiangnan," Huan said bluntly. Huan was taken aback. Then she laughed. "You like Brother Xiangnan?" "Yes, Brother Xiangnan is very handsome." Huan blushed. Huan was stunned again. She thought that it was easy for Huan to say she liked someone at her age, but it was very difficult for her and Qin Mo to say they liked someone even once. Perhaps after everything that had happened, even if there was some liking left, it would be too much for her to say. She did not say anything else but reached out to stroke the little girl's head. In the afternoon, Yi Liangqiu called and asked to have tea with Huan outside. It was obvious that she wanted to avoid Huan. Huan agreed. At 3:00 in the afternoon, she drove out. Of course, the family servant immediately told Qin Mo, "Madam is driving out." Qin Mo pondered for a moment. "Where are we going?" He must have received a call from old Madam. "I think they went to have tea together," the servant replied after thinking for a while. Qin Mo said, "Got it. Don't let Madam know that I know about this." After that, he hung up the phone. The company was at the end of the year, and there were many things to deal with at the end of the year. Chapter 4466. Huan drove for half an hour and arrived at the appointed place. It was a very high-end clubhouse for women, one that attracted tens of millions of members. Huan didn't have a card and the receptionist didn't know her, but she knew that she came from a rich family from the car she was driving. She asked enthusiastically, "Miss, do you have an appointment?" "I'm looking for Mrs. Qin," Huan said lightly. The receptionist immediately showed a respectful expression. Mrs. Qin was one of the richest families in B City, but the one in front of her, "You are?" The receptionist's eyes were sparkling. Huan knew who these people were and said lightly, "I'm the daughter of her friend." Just then, Yi Liangqiu came down from the elevator to greet them. She heard what she said and said naturally, "You're being naughty again. You became your friend's daughter." Yi Liangqiu walked over quickly and said to the receptionist with a smile, "She's Qin Mo's wife, my daughter-in-law." The receptionist's eyes lit up. That's right. Only a daughter-in-law could have such an aura. She became even more enthusiastic and led them into the elevator. When only the two of them were left in the elevator, the atmosphere was a bit strange. Yi Liangqiu sighed and didn't say anything impatiently. But she knew that she wasn't the only one who broke up with He Huan because of Qin Mo. He Huan and Qin Mo weren't on good terms in the past, but they still had a good relationship. But she didn't do it right. Qin Mo was Qin Mo, and she, as his mother-in-law, was her mother-in-law. No matter how much He Huan hated Qin Mo, she was still honest after they reconciled. She, as her mother-in-law, was different, even though He Huan had grown up in the Qin family and was like her biological daughter. But she was still a bit cruel to this child who was like her own. When they entered the private room, it was quiet. The air was fragrant and smoke curled up. Yi Liangqiu made the tea and poured it for He Huan. She explained, "This tea is very refreshing and won't hurt your stomach. I know that Qin Mo has been paying attention to your health." She paused for a moment and looked at He Huan. "It's a lot thinner. I brought some tonics over. I'll ask the auntie at home to stew them for you. I didn't know you lost so much weight last time. I only knew that you were sick." Actually, when Yi Liangqiu thought about it, she still felt a little guilty. He Huan could no longer have children, which meant that she had lost a lot of opportunities. All traditional families wanted a child, and He Huan didn't want to be with Qin Mo. However, under the current circumstances, she might not have a better choice. Therefore, even if it wasn't for Qin Mo's sake, Yi Liangqiu still hoped that He Huan could stay in the Qin family and give them a chance to make it up to him. However, He Huan couldn't say these words out loud, but she understood. Even Su Qing knew. Otherwise, with Su Cheng's personality, she would have made a fuss. Not to mention that Qin Mo had gone overboard previously, they, as his parents, couldn't stand it. She said all these and He Huan indeed understood. She lowered her voice. "I understand what you mean. I'll take care of my body, and slowly. I'll get better." As she spoke, she felt a little bitter. She picked up the cup and took a sip. The tea was indeed fragrant. He Huan looked up and smiled. "Not bad tea. I brought it here. I'll bring some back for you later," Yi Liangqiu said immediately. He Huan was stunned. "There's no need for that." Chapter 44-67. This "thank you" touched Yi Liangqiu's heart. Since when did He Huan become so polite to her? In the past, He Huan would only smile and say "thank you, Mom," even when her relationship with Qin Mo was at its worst. Yi Liangqiu sighed in her heart and then sighed. "He Huan, since when did we become so distant?" She paused. "In the future, we will still be family." Her words were very clear and He Huan couldn't play dumb. After all, they had lived together for a long time. Yi Liangqiu had indeed been very good to her and had doted on her for a long time. He Huan was a little emotional. She took a sip of tea and said softly, "I need time." The originally fragrant tea tasted a little bitter in her mouth. He Huan paused before saying, "No matter what happens between me and Qin Mo, you will still be my mommy Yi from now on." Yi Liangqiu was used to big scenes and had been through a lot. However, there was only one thing that had been weighing on her heart for a long time, and that was He Huan. She had let this child down. No matter what, it was better for the matter between Qin Mo and He Huan to be settled by them. Moreover, it was Qin Mo who had been rough with He Huan and wanted to divorce her. Later on, it was Qin Mo who had wanted to woo He Huan back. She had been the villain. Yi Liangqiu knew that it wasn't easy for He Huan to say this. She also knew that He Huan hadn't forgiven Qin Mo. Miscarriage and infertility were huge blows to He Huan. Su Ilio's life had been intertwined, so Yi Liangqiu knew that it wasn't easy for her to say this. After that, they didn't say anything more. She took He Huan to do a body maintenance. After that, He Huan had to go back. She still had to attend King Entertainment's finale. Qin Mo also said that he would pick her up at 5. And now, it was already 5:10 p.m. He Huan looked at her watch and smiled faintly. I have to go back, Mom. As she said this, her phone rang. It was Qin Mo. He Huan answered, well, I'll be back in a while. Qin Mo said that it was too late and asked her to wait for him there. He would come to pick her up directly. He Huan let out an "ah" and felt that she was being too casual. She wore a green sweater inside, a pair of medium heels, and a coat on the outside. He Huan was hesitant, but Qin Mo insisted. He Huan hung up the phone in embarrassment. Qin Mo said he would pick me up. Why don't we sit for a while? A few years ago, Qin Anlin and Yi Liangqiu stopped attending the company's finale and handed it over to Qin Mo and He Huan. In the past, He Huan had always been like this. Qin Mo was a one-man show and secretary, he had to be his dance partner. But now that He Huan was back, it was naturally different and she had to do it well. Moreover, they were remarried now, so there was a deeper meaning to it. Yi Liangqiu naturally understood. She reached out to caress He Huan's little head and smiled. Have fun tonight. I heard there's a lucky draw and the grand prize is a dance with Qin Mo. Don't waste it. He Huan had never heard of this and was a little stunned. Yi Liangqiu smiled again. But I haven't given it out in the past few years. It's probably because, she smiled meaningfully. It's probably because you're not here. He Huan was a little embarrassed. After a long time, she said something softly and then sat in the hall to wait for Qin Mo. Chapter 44-68. When Qin Mo arrived, he saw He Huan and his mother sitting together and chatting. Their expressions were much warmer than before. His heart warmed and he slowed down his pace, as if he was afraid of startling them. When he reached them, he stood behind He Huan and greeted his mother. Then he bent down and said to He Huan in a friendly manner, "It's almost time. Let's go." He Huan looked up at him and took a long time to come back to her senses because Qin Mo had been smiling the whole time. She snapped back to reality and said goodbye to Yi Liangqiu, "Mom, Qin Mo and I will be leaving first." Yi Liangqiu smiled and stood up as well. Qin Mo helped He Huan carry her things and took a look around. He put his arm around his wife's shoulder and said goodbye to his mother. Yi Liangqiu insisted on sending them to the car before she went to the chauffeur. Qin Mo started the car and looked at He Huan. "You've been sitting here all afternoon." He Huan looked out of the car window and said calmly, "Didn't you already know?" Qin Mo smiled silently and didn't explain. He just reached out and held her fingers. He Huan's fingers were a little cold. It was cold and comfortable to hold. But more than that, he felt sorry for her. She was in a warm place like the clubhouse, but her hands were still cold. Qin Mo's heart ached a little. He thought that his mother had the same thoughts as him. Everything else aside, He Huan's body really needed to rest for a while. Originally they were holding hands, but now they interlocked their fingers. He Huan turned her head to look at him and reminded him in a small voice, "Drive carefully." Qin Mo smiled, took her hand and kissed it. Then, he let go and focused on driving. It was only half an hour's drive from here to Wei Ya's hotel. They arrived quickly, and when they arrived, it was exactly 7:00 on time. Wei Ya had also started. For such events, Qin Mo would usually just say a few words at the beginning and dance. After that, there was almost nothing else. He would usually leave early and wouldn't eat with the employees. Therefore, in the eyes of King Entertainment's employees, President Qin was a rather aloof person. This time, it was the first time that President Qin had brought his wife to the company's ending party. When Qin Mo appeared with He Huan, everyone was quite touched. Because He Huan wasn't wearing a formal dress. She was only wearing a white coat with a green wool skirt inside. After a while, Qin Mo helped her take off the coat very carefully. Any woman would be envious of such care, but He Huan was used to it. She naturally sat with Qin Mo at the main table. Her table mates were all senior executives of King Entertainment. Naturally, all of them were trying to curry favor with He Huan. He Huan was also a famous director, so of course she wouldn't be shy in such an occasion. But today, she was acting as Qin Mo's wife, so she was quite easygoing and dignified. Actually, with He Huan's personality, she would never lose her composure. She would never pay too much attention to unrelated people. She was always indifferent, which was also in line with her identity. Qin Mo went on stage and gave a simple speech for a few minutes. Naturally, he was at ease and elegant. Below the stage, countless women looked at him with adoration. But they clearly knew that President Qin could only watch from afar. This year, President Qin spoke for 2 more minutes on stage. The reason was probably because He Huan was below the stage, so he enjoyed the feeling of being on stage because He Huan's gaze would occasionally land on him. Chapter 44-69. After Qin Mo finished speaking, the beautiful female MC praised Qin Mo with exaggerated words. Then, she smiled and gestured for President Qin to start the dance. Secretary He, who was sitting on the second seat, secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She finally didn't have to show up today. She and President Qin didn't seem like a good match at all. Meanwhile, Qin Mo had already gotten off the stage. He walked over to He Huan and bent down to whisper a few words to her. He Huan was a little surprised. She didn't know that there was a dance. However, a girl like her would definitely know how to dance, and she could dance very well. Although He Huan wasn't wearing a gown today, she was wearing a fruit green wool dress that looked very spring. She looked fresh and warm. Coupled with He Huan's delicate and beautiful face, she really outshone all the other female celebrities. Even Sui Liu was outshone. Qin Mo was much taller than He Huan when they stood side by side. He was 184 centimeters, while He Huan was just a little over 160 centimeters. The DJ was playing a very soothing love song from England. It was very romantic. Qin Mo and He Huan danced magnificently. She didn't know if the song was deliberately played on the day of their wedding. Also, Qin Mo also danced with He Huan that day. How do you feel? Qin Mo lowered his head. I saw you eat something. Is it to your liking? What he didn't tell her was that the table was specially prepared for her. It was very nourishing. Of course, the higher-ups couldn't get used to it. It was a table full of men, and the food was either to nourish yin or increase estrogen. The expressions of the higher-ups were very interesting. However, He Huan didn't know that. She looked up and smiled. It's pretty good. She did eat a few mouthfuls. It seemed to taste good. After that, Qin Mo didn't say anything else. He held her in his arms and quietly danced, enjoying the moment. Everyone below the stage was intoxicated by the beautiful moment. Except for Suilio. She couldn't hide the disappointment in her eyes when she saw Chin Mo and Hehuan hugging each other. She didn't know why Chin Mo still chose Hehuan when she was the one who could bring him happiness. She had heard that Hehuan had a miscarriage and could no longer bear another child. This was because Chin Hehuan had to be the successor of King Entertainment. She had already been sent to a nursery school for training, and this was all because Hehuan had no chance to give birth to another boy. But she was different. She was still young. She could give birth to 3, 4, 5. She believed that the combination of her and Chin Mo would produce the best genes. But she had no chance. Was there really no chance? Many people saw Suilio's disappointed expression and sighed in their hearts. Suilio used to be very close to becoming Mrs. Chin, but Hehuan made it back so easily. Actually, it wasn't. Hehuan was there, and Boss Chin was just throwing a little tantrum. Now that everything was reversed, Suilio would no longer have any chance, but it was hard to say. Women's competition wasn't limited. For example, the best dress tonight was to dance with President Chin. It was said that Suilio had put in a lot of effort to get the best dress tonight, although no one expected Hehuan to be there. The music came to an end as everyone was deep in their own thoughts. Chin Mo hugged Hehuan gently in the music and said 2 words in her ear. Even Hehuan was stunned and looked at him in a daze. "Are you stupid?" Chin Mo smiled lightly. "Isn't it normal to confess to your wife?" Chapter 4470. Hehuan's breathing paused for a moment before she said slowly, "But there are a lot of people here, they can't hear us, so it won't affect us. Besides..." Chin Mo's voice was unhurried. "Sometimes we can't help ourselves." Hehuan wanted to say something, but then realized that they had been standing on the stage for a long time after the dance. She bit her lip and said, "We should get off the stage." Chin Mo smiled and held her in his arms as they walked down together. Sitting down, as the president of King Entertainment, Chin Mo was naturally toasted by many people. The usually aloof President Chin was very approachable and didn't refuse anyone. Of course, there were people who toasted Hehuan, but they were all blocked by Chin Mo. However, he didn't let her drink with others, so he personally fed her a glass of red wine. Hehuan's body was fragile. She slowly drank a glass of red wine, and her cheeks were rosy. She looked very pretty, and with her straight black hair, she looked especially young. If one didn't know better, they would never think that she was already in her early 30s. As for Chin Mo himself, he was already 38 years old. There was a huge age gap between them. Hehuan leaned back in her chair and looked at Chin Mo. He had already gotten up to go to another table. After all, it was President Chin who needed to socialize. She also felt that he was in high spirits today, so she came back and poured a few glasses of wine. Hehuan was afraid that he would really get drunk, so she couldn't help but remind him, "Chin Mo, don't drink too much." She knew that if he got drunk, she would be tortured. And he seemed to be getting drunk on purpose. Men were all bad. Chin Mo sat down and poured himself another glass of red wine. He couldn't help but chuckle when he heard what Hehuan said. He leaned over and murmured, "You're afraid that I'll do something to you when I get drunk, huh?" Hehuan looked at him and said in a low voice, "Chin Mo." He smiled and leaned closer. "I won't get drunk, don't worry. I still have to take you home." Hehuan pursed her lips and glanced at him again. Chin Mo reached out and patted her shoulder. Then, he smiled and left the table to attend another social event. Their intimacy was naturally very rare. Everyone felt that President Chin and his wife were very harmonious. While Chin Mo was socializing, the MC had already received the vote for the best dress tonight. Well, the MC felt a little pressured. After all, Suilio was ranked first, and President Chin's wife was ranked second. Normally, if the CEO's wife was present, most people would vote for Hehuan. However, if Suilio had so many votes, there was something fishy about it. The host was wondering if she should find some privacy, but after thinking about it, she decided to test President Chin. She directly mentioned Suilio's name. Of course, everyone was shocked, and there were even gasps. Although Suilio was dressed well tonight, Hehuan and President Chin looked more compatible. President Chin was very casual tonight. He was wearing a classic black and white suit, but it wasn't a very formal style. It was a little casual, and it matched Hehuan very well. Suilio was wearing a light purple gown, which looked too grand. It was the standard red carpet style. After the MC announced her name, Hehuan didn't react. Chin Mo probably forgot about it. He only remembered when the MC announced her name again. Chin Mo didn't go on stage first. Instead, he looked at Hehuan. Hehuan looked at him too. He smiled faintly and went on stage. Suilio also went on stage confidently, ready to dance. Chapter 4471. Chin Mo took the microphone from the MC and said with a faint smile, "My wife probably won't agree to me dancing with a female celebrity, so I'll give this opportunity to our vice president." The vice president of King Entertainment was stunned. He opened his mouth and wanted to say that he also had a wife and that his wife was there, but since President Chin had spoken, he had to bite the bullet and do it. Later, when he was punished by his wife for this dance, he remembered that he was the one who had thought of this program. And it had been designed to curry favor with President Chin many years ago, so that President Chin and Hehuan could dance one more time. Who knew that he would end up harming himself? The vice president went to dance. His middle-aged body was in stark contrast to Suilio's slender figure. Although their physiques weren't right, the vice president's status wouldn't bring shame to Suilio. She gritted her teeth and accepted it. At this moment, Chin Mo returned to his seat and took Hehuan's coat, scarf, hat, and even gloves. He said goodbye to his table mates and prepared to leave. From start to finish, it could be said that he stayed for about an hour. Hehuan walked out with her hand in his. Everyone was staring at them. On the stage, Suilio was gritting her teeth and dancing with the vice president. Off stage, the vice president's wife was staring at them like a tiger, afraid that her husband's hand would be up to no good. The young women in the entertainment industry were all little demons. She had to be careful. Hehuan and Chin Mo walked out of the hall. It was a little cold outside and she shrank her head. Chin Mo smiled and reached out to gently stroke her hair. "You're so afraid of the cold." Hehuan glanced at him. "You haven't eaten much and you're already drinking. Why don't you eat more?" "Concerned about me," he murmured. "Hehuan, if you really care about me, treat me better." They entered the elevator. It was just the two of them. Hehuan's gaze was on the mirror. In the mirror, it was the two of them, and Chin Mo's hand was still holding hers. She struggled but could not break free. He held her hand stubbornly, and his eyes met hers in the mirror. He did not miss her expression. She whispered, "What do you mean by being nicer? You care about what I wear every day. You pick out my tie for me. You also pick out my shirt for me at the mall. You call me when I'm late." He spoke very quickly, as if he had been muttering to himself for a long time. Hehuan glanced at him. "These personal assistants can be taken care of. And I hope that person is Mrs. Chin," he said as he hugged her and lowered his head to kiss her. He didn't care if the elevator door would open at any moment. Hehuan was stunned for a moment and instinctively wanted to push him away, but Chin Mo seemed to be in a good mood after drinking. He held her face and kissed her while murmuring, "Walk with me outside. It's cold outside." She bit her lower lip. Chin Mo's eyes were very close to hers, and he said with a smile, "Then let's go for a while. I'll ask the driver to follow us from afar." Huan still wanted to refuse, but Chin Mo insisted. When they walked out of the hotel, he took a jacket from the car and put it on her shoulders, revealing only her eyes. Huan was speechless. If he wanted to be romantic, he would probably be disappointed when she was dressed like a bear. But it didn't affect him at all. He held her hand and strolled on the streets of Beast City. The night was a little cold, but there was a hint of the atmosphere of the new year, which was cold and rich. Chapter 4472. In the distance, someone was secretly setting off firecrackers. The subtle sound reminded Huan of her childhood. She could not help but hold on to Chin Mo's hand tightly. She turned her head and said, "I want to set off fireworks." Chin Mo also looked at her. After a while, he smiled and agreed. Later, they got into the car and drove for 2 hours to a small shop in the suburbs to buy fireworks. They were all the kind that had been bought a long time ago. Then, they drove to a place further away. In an open space, Chin Mo arranged the fireworks and lit them up with a lighter. In an instant, the dark night sky was lit up. It rose, and fell again. Huan covered her ears and watched with her eyes wide open. She had not seen fireworks for a long time. She did not know why she wanted to see this tonight. Chin Mo walked toward her from the flames. He had a firework stick in his hand, and he stuffed it into her hand. Huan screamed. "Coward!" Chin Mo chuckled and hugged her from behind. He also held her hand and looked at the night sky. The night was very dark. The stars were bright, and the fireworks were beautiful. Chin Mo's embrace was very warm. Later, Huan fell asleep. When she opened her eyes, it was dark in front of her, and she was nestled in Chin Mo's arms. She murmured and asked him where they were. Chin Mo said that there was still a long way to go, and he asked her to sleep a little longer. His voice was very gentle, and Huan almost drowned in it. She could not help hugging his waist tightly and murmured, "Are you hungry? You still miss me?" He whispered. Then, he bent down and kissed her. "You have to treat me better, okay?" Huan did not answer. She fell asleep again. Chin Mo was really in high spirits tonight. The driver sent them to a villa in the suburbs. It was usually unoccupied, and there was no one else there. The servants who usually took care of the house were already asleep. He carried Huan out of the car and upstairs. She was very sleepy at first, but Chin Mo turned on the music and wanted to dance with her. Huan couldn't help but scold him for being a psycho. Later, he wanted to do something else besides dancing. In the end, Huan cried and yelled that he was a psycho. After one night, Huan caught a cold, while the man who had been drinking in a good mood was in good spirits. When he found out that Huan had caught a cold, he drove to buy cold medicine and cooked for her. When he was making breakfast, Chin Mo's face had some lingering lust. After all, they had drunk wine last night, and some things still happen naturally. Huan didn't reject it as simply as before. He was very satisfied. Chin Mo was very satisfied. He smiled slightly and prepared breakfast. He put the cold medicine on a tray and carried it to the master bedroom on the second floor. Huan had already sat up. She was wearing pajamas. She looked at him. "Chin Mo, I want to go home. Go back at noon." "Take the medicine first," he said in a good temper. Huan did not move. Why didn't you go back last night? He put the things on the bedside table and smiled. Why do you still ask that now? Mrs. Chin, you really are an innocent little thing. Huan turned her face away. She knew that he was up to no good. However, her face still turned red. I caught a cold. Yes, you caught a cold, so I probably won't do anything to you for 2 or 3 days. So, eat breakfast. That way, you'll get better easily. It's New Year in 2 days, and you still have to visit relatives. He was still gently coaxing her. Chapter 44-73. Huan bit her lip. I don't want to take the medicine. Qin Mo looked at her and said slowly, then you want me to feed you. His voice was faint, but it was very threatening. Huan recalled a time when she didn't want to take the medicine when she was in her teens and he fed her the medicine. At that time, she was with him. When he did that, Huan widened her eyes and was at a loss. That was also the first time he kissed her so deeply. Huan's face was a little red because she thought of the past. Qin Mo looked at her and put the medicine in her palm. Eat it, or else. I actually prefer another way. She knew that he preferred another way, so she lowered her head and ate the medicine. Qin Mo looked at her silently. After she was done with her medicine, he fed her breakfast. Huan wasn't willing. He was a little forceful and there was a hint of threat in his tone. Huan could only lean against the headboard and eat breakfast. After that, she wanted to lie down again, saying that she was a little dizzy. Qin Mo reached out and touched her forehead. Thank goodness it's not hot. Let's sleep for a while. If you wake up before noon, we'll go back. If not, we'll eat here and go back at night. As he said that, he looked outside. It's a little cold outside now. My mom took Huan back, so don't worry. Is Huan in the chill garden? Huan hugged herself in the blanket and murmured. Qin Mo sat on the headboard and said, yes. She nodded and leaned against the pillow quietly. After a while, she looked around for a long time before leaning against the pillow again. This place is not bad. Let's stay here for a day. This villa was decorated in the American style. She liked it very much. It was also quiet and no one would disturb her. She just happened to feel dizzy and wanted to rest more. She didn't want to move at all. With regards to her request, Qin Mo was surprised. After a long time, he came back to his senses and kissed her. Do you really want to stay here for a day? I want to sleep. Huan closed her eyes. Qin Mo, don't disturb me. As she said this, one of her fair hands pressed flat against the side of the pillow, and her long eyelashes gently closed. That quiet and beautiful scene made Qin Mo reluctant to look away, and he kept staring at it. Huan lay there quietly. She soon fell asleep because she had a cold. Qin Mo originally wanted to go to the study to deal with some affairs. After all, it was the end of the year and there were some things that needed to be wrapped up. However, she looked like a little angel when she slept, and he still couldn't bear to leave. In the end, he took his notebook and looked at her sleeping face while he worked. It was a quiet morning, and the winter sun shone into the master bedroom. The room was as warm as spring. Qin Mo glanced at Huan from time to time as he worked. Looking at her face, he could not help but smile. When she woke up, it was already 1 in the afternoon. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she felt was hunger and sweat. Huan sat up and saw that Qin Mo was sitting on the sofa opposite her, working. He was looking down, and when he heard her voice, he immediately looked up. You're awake. He put down the notebook in his hand, walked over, and naturally kissed her. His voice was a little hoarse. Get up and take a shower first. I'll go downstairs to make something to eat. Hehuan was still looking at him. Qin Emo reached out and touched her forehead. It was cold. She should be sweating. He asked again, do you want me to carry you? No, I still have this little strength. Hehuan's voice was a little soft. Qin Emo smiled and reached out to touch her hair gently. Chapter 44-74. He was very gentle and so was his gaze. Hehuan couldn't take it anymore. She bit her lip and turned her face away. I'm going to take a shower. Qin Emo smiled. He lifted the blanket for her and carried her to the bathroom. Hehuan almost screamed, Qin Emo. I'll carry you. I'll run some hot water for you to soak for a while. He murmured gently and carried her in. He placed her on the edge of the bathtub and turned the water on for her. He was taking care of her as if he was taking care of little Hehuan. Hehuan wasn't used to it, but she had to get used to it because he was so overbearing. Fortunately, he didn't do anything when the water was full. He let her soak herself and left gracefully. However, he told her not to soak for too long. After Qin Emo left, Hehuan soaked in the bathtub alone. It was warm and comfortable. She didn't want to get up, but she knew that she couldn't soak for too long in her weak body. Thus, she got up after about 15 minutes. She put on a thick bathrobe, dried her hair, and put on skincare products in front of the vanity. He was very nice and considerate to her. Even in such a place where they didn't live, there were brands that she often used. Hehuan sat on the chair and stared at her pale, fragile face in the mirror. Other than being sick, she knew that the luxurious skincare products had made her pale again. Such a pampered life was actually quite good if she could relax. Qin Emo was very nice to her and accommodated her. But she just felt that something was missing. Moreover, some things had happened. It wouldn't be as if nothing had happened just because the wound had healed. She didn't know how long it would take for her to recover. But she thought that the reason why she was with Qin Emo was definitely not because of his threats. That wasn't her personality. But she knew it in her heart. She yearned for such gentleness. At least now, she was a little tired and didn't want to move. Thus, she stayed by his side and enjoyed his care. She didn't even reject his approach. Perhaps it was because everyone had their weakest moments. Hehuan thought about it quietly. If it were someone else, they would probably wake up from their dreams with such wealth and the love of a husband. However, Hehuan knew that there was a price to pay for all this love and love. Freedom was the price. While Hehuan was thinking, another person appeared in the mirror. It was Qin Emo. He stood behind her with both hands on the back of the chair and leaned towards her. He gently sniffed and whispered, "Smells good." Hehuan bit her lower lip. "Rose. It smells good. I'll change the smell in the apartment to this." His voice was very charming. It was a tone used to talk to a lover, gentle and somewhat domineering. Hehuan had to admit that he was indeed a very charming man, but since she had grown up with him, she might not be so easily captivated. Occasionally, she would be a little dazed by his mature charm. Just like, now. She pursed her lips. "Didn't you say we were going for lunch? Shall we go downstairs?" Qin Emo smiled. He didn't make things difficult for her, nor did he do anything out of line. He just walked in front of her. Hehuan thought it was a random meal, but when she went downstairs, she found out that he had hired a Michelin chef to make it. The lunch was exquisite, and the atmosphere was just right for the two of them. Qin Emo pulled out the chair for Hehuan and sat down after she sat down. Chapter 4475. Huan thought that it was a random meal, but when she went downstairs, she found out that he had hired a Michelin chef. The lunch was exquisite, and the atmosphere was just right for the two of them. Mo pulled out the chair for Huan and sat down after she sat down. In the exquisitely decorated living room, Michelin music was playing, and it was very relaxing. Mo did not talk about personal matters or company matters, and only mentioned some interesting things about his study abroad. When he deliberately exuded his masculine charm, he would be really charming. Huan was a little nervous at first, but she relaxed after a while. After the meal, she was in a much better mood, and even her cold seemed to be much better. She also found Mo more pleasing to the eye, except for the fact that he made her take medicine at the end. Huan looked at the medicine in his hand and refused to take it. "I've recovered from my cold." At this time, she was sitting in the sunroom on the second floor, comfortably basking in the sun on the sofa. It was supposed to be very comfortable, but he actually made her take medicine. Huan refused to take it, and as she spoke, she buried her face in the back of the sofa. Mo looked at her. "You have to take medicine for at least 2 days for a cold. Huan, you're not in good health." "I'm getting calluses from those words." Huan couldn't take it anymore, and she covered her ears and pretended to be dead. Mo was angry and amused at the same time, and he reached out to pull her ears. "Why are you so shameless?" "I just don't want to take medicine, it's very bitter." Huan still pretended to be dead, and she looked at him again. "Mo, you take it for me." After saying that, she seemed to have remembered something and stopped talking. Mo's expression suddenly became dangerous, but he quickly changed his tone and expression into a very gentle one. "I don't have a cold, why should I take medicine?" As he said that, he reached out to grab her slender arm. "Huan, I know you remember, don't pretend to be dead." Huan was extremely afraid of him, and she bit her lip. "I'll be fine after I take the medicine." At this time, she was just like that high school girl, and he couldn't help himself. Mo pulled her over and put her in his arms carefully. Then he lowered his head and whispered to her, "Don't run around in the future. How good you are now." He couldn't help but reach out and gently touch her face. It was soft everywhere, just like when she was in her 20s. Mo suddenly felt that he was old, and Huan was still a high school girl. He had to admit that he preferred her this way. Huan bit her lip. "Mo," he continued, "I'll feed you medicine, okay?" Huan wanted to reject him. Firstly, she was afraid of him, and secondly, she was afraid of the medicine. She was extremely afraid of these two things. However, now that these two things were right in front of her, she was not only afraid but also expectant. Mo's eyes were as black as ink, and there was a hint of laughter in his voice. "I heard that love is a chemical reaction. What do you think, Huan?" "I don't know." She protested weakly, and her body moved back uncomfortably, but she had no way to escape. In the end, he gently held her in his arms and fed her the medicine. He fed her carefully. Later, Huan thought that the medicine didn't seem so bitter. Later in the afternoon, Mo taught her French, Italian, and about 7 or 8 languages. Every time he taught her a language, he would teach her various kissing techniques. For the whole afternoon, Huan was taught by words and deeds, and she didn't know whether she or Mo took the medicine, but no one cared. They only knew. Chapter 4476. That night, they still spent the night in this villa. At 8 or 9 o'clock, it started snowing again. Huan ran to the floor-to-ceiling window and pressed her hand against the glass. Mo, it's snowing again. Mo walked over. The gray sweater he was wearing was especially comfortable and beautiful. He hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. Have you made a wish? I'll only make a wish if there's a shooting star. Hehuan tilted her head and looked at him uncomfortably. Chin-mo chuckled and tightened his arms, hugging her small body in his arms. Make a wish to me. What if your wish comes true? Hehuan looked outside again and then said in a low voice, 2 billion yuan in the box office. It shouldn't be difficult, Chin-mo murmured and then kissed her. After a light kiss, he looked outside with her. What other wishes do you have? Hehuan lowered her eyes. I want to continue being a director. Chin-mo didn't say anything. He just reached out and gently stroked her hair. So she knew that she was rejected or not allowed. Love was equal, but this time, their marriage wasn't equal. She had to listen to Chin-mo. Everything. Hehuan lowered her eyes. Her eyes were a little sore and bitter, and she didn't look up for a long time. After a long time, when the sourness spread to her nose, she said in a low voice, Chin-mo, do you want me to stay at home forever? Do you want me to feel like I'm trapped in a cage forever? My love is a cage. Chin-mo didn't get angry. He just lowered his head and kissed her. Hehuan suddenly didn't know what to say. After a long time, she sighed. Let's watch the snow. Probably because it was too beautiful here, Chin-mo and Hehuan stayed for another day. They only returned to the original villa the next afternoon. On their way back, they picked up Hehuan. Perhaps because it was so wonderful here, Chin-mo and Hehuan stayed another day and returned to the original villa the next afternoon. On their way back, they picked up Hehuan. The interior of the villa had already been decorated. It was as if Q had changed his skin. Little Hehuan was wearing a checkered coat and her hair was cut short. She looked like she was of mixed blood, especially her skin, which was very, very fair. Chin-mo carried Xiao Hehuan into the house and put her down as soon as he entered. Then, he looked at Hehuan and said, kids all like this. I like it too. Hehuan smiled and hugged his arm. Chin-mo lowered his gaze and looked at her hand that was hugging him. Although it was only for a while, it was a big kiss. In all the years that he and Hehuan had been together, it was rare for them to do something like this. Chin-mo had an indescribable feeling in his heart. Hehuan wanted to move her hand away, but he grabbed her and said in a low voice, your hand is so cold. Put it in my pocket. With that said, he put Hehuan's hand into his pocket. Hehuan looked at him. He smiled and brought her upstairs. Hehuan thought he was going to the bedroom again. She bit her lip. Chin-mo. She felt that she was too indulgent. Chin-mo looked at her. What's wrong? Hehuan didn't say a word. Her face was tense. Chin-mo laughed. You thought I wanted to. With that said, he dragged her into the study. The door closed and Hehuan was pressed against the door. She bit her lip. Chin-mo, this is the study. A smile appeared on his handsome face. I thought I wanted to do something to you. I just wanted to give you some lucky money. Chapter 4477. Hehuan looked at him. Do I have red packets too? Chin-mo smiled. Of course. With that said, he brought her to the bookcase and opened a safe. There was a large amount of cash and a box inside. Chin-mo took a look and took it out for Hehuan. This is for you. Hehuan looked at him and opened it. Inside was a diamond ring. It was a pink diamond, about 3 to 4 carats. It was worth at least a few $100 million. Hehuan looked at Chin-mo. As he took something else, he said, "You can wear it now. You can try it on." Huan looked at Qin Mo, then took it out and put it on. Indeed, she was thinner and paler now. She looked beautiful when she wore it. It was just that it wasn't convenient for her to work. She was suitable to be Mrs. Qin. Huan was stunned. Qin Mo had already taken out a few documents and a black envelope. He walked to the desk and turned to ask Huan to come over. Huan was still looking at the pink diamond. It was beautiful and she almost liked it. Qin Mo looked at her cute dazed expression. He couldn't help but knock her on her head. "What's wrong? Are you stupid?" Huan snapped out of her trance and wanted to take the ring off. She said in a low voice, "Isn't this too expensive?" Qin Mo smiled faintly. "It's not expensive on Mrs. Qin's hand. You can wear it no matter how expensive it is." Huan didn't take it off again. She followed him there. Qin Mo pushed the document in front of her. "This is 5% of King Entertainment's shares." Huan was stunned. She knew that King Entertainment's shares were never divided. Qin Chen and Qin Mu did have 10%, but that was directly allocated by Qin Anlin. Qin Mo, as the CEO of King Entertainment, had 40%, which was considered an absolute controlling stake. Usually, he wouldn't touch it. But now he was giving her 5%, Huan couldn't help but think about it. She said softly, "Is this a condition? A condition that I won't be a director in the future?" Actually, it was a very generous condition. Just this 5% alone was worth at least 100 million. Qin Mo sighed. This is the benefit of being Mrs. Qin. He reached out and pulled her onto his lap. His voice became even lower. "Huan, this is the stable life I want to give you." Then he rested his chin on her shoulder and held her hand with one hand. His voice became even lower. "Filming is very tiring. My heart aches too. Besides, I'm almost 40. Spend more time with me, okay?" Huan wanted to turn around in his arms, but he didn't let her. He wanted to kiss her with a smile in his voice. Huan bit her lip. "Qin Mo, don't do that. I don't fall for it." Still smiling, he held her hand and signed away with her. Huan was speechless. Qin Mo closed the file as if nothing had happened and handed the black envelope to Huan. "This is my secondary card. Keep it. Swipe it from here when you want to spend money. The password is your birthday." Huan still wanted to say something, but Qin Mo lowered his head and pinched her cheek. New Year's money. At this time, the clock rang 7 times. It was actually 7 in the evening. Qin Mo kissed her. "Happy New Year, Mrs. Qin." He added, "This is a promise." Huan gently licked her lips. "Let Huan stay by my side." She mustered up her courage to say it. Then she looked at him. At this time, Huan really felt that if he was willing to let Huan stay, she would stay. Even if she had to be Mrs. Qin, even if she didn't have to film, she was willing. Chapter 4478. Qin Mo lowered his head while Huan sat on his lap, looking up at him nervously and helplessly. Of course, he could see Huan's uneasiness and pleading. Qin Mo gently touched her little face with his fingers and sighed softly. "Do you really want to keep her by your side?" Huan said yes and then looked at him again. Qin Mo sighed again. Huan, this is her mission and she has to bear the responsibility." Huan bit her lip and the color of her lips almost became very pale. After a long time, she said that she understood. "Are you angry?" Qin Mo whispered, "Huan, I just want to tell you that Yi Huan is not as fragile as you think. Didn't you run away abroad when you were in your early 20s? You were alone. Yi Huan lowered her eyes. But I was very happy before I was in my teens. I didn't have so many responsibilities. You were very happy before you were in your teens. Qin Emo reached out to hold her face and lowered his voice. Really, Yi Huan? Did you feel very happy? She had been with Qin Emo before she was in her teens and they had been together most of the time. Yi Huan pursed her lips and looked at him. You're being picky with me again. No. He smiled. It's because I care. Yi Huan immediately stopped talking. Then she wanted to get up, but Qin Emo pressed her down and didn't let her get up. Aren't we going to eat? The smell of food wafted in the air. Qin Mo's chin rested on her hair and his voice was very gentle. Don't move. I just want to hold you for a while. She was swept into his warm arms. The huge pink diamond on her fingertip was dazzling and she was still holding the New Year's money he gave her. Yi Huan almost indulged in it. Yi Huan pushed the door open and came in. Then she screamed and covered her eyes shyly. The little fellow ran out again and Yi Huan didn't even have time to call her. The back view of the little plaid jacket looked like a boy. Yi Huan sighed. Who took her to get a haircut? Qin Emo laughed and kissed her. It's Qin Chen's personal stylist, Tony. Yi Huan looked at him. Don't you care about Qin Emo? I thought you liked girls like Qin Mu. She's Yi Huan. No matter what, she's still Yi Huan. It's fine as long as she's happy, and she can always adjust it, right? Yi Huan looked down. What about your feelings? Can feelings be controlled? She had been through that. She knew that once she was involved with certain men, she would not be able to escape. Just like her and Qin Emo, just like Qin Mu and Zhou Chongguang, just like Cher and Yi Muyun. Wen Yuan, Bai Shuili, they were all examples. Yi Xiangnan was Yi Mubai's son. None of the men in the Yi family were easy to deal with, from the top to the bottom. Yi Huan was not so stupid as to think that Yi Huan could return them if she grew up and didn't like them. Sometimes, it was beyond her control. She wanted to exchange herself for Yi Huan, but Qin Emo obviously refused. He wanted Yi Huan, but he also had his own plans for Yi Huan. What are you thinking about? Qin Emo whispered. Yi Huan came back to reality. Nothing. Let's eat. I'm hungry. Qin Emo looked at her carefully and suddenly smiled. You seem to have put on a little weight. You have some flesh. He slept with her every night, so he naturally knew. Although she had caught a cold in the past 2 days, she was recovering well. He almost took care of her like a daughter. Yi Huan glanced at him and turned her head away. She seemed to be a little sentimental. Qin Emo smiled and couldn't help kissing her again. Okay, let's go downstairs for dinner. New wife number 1, honey, I'm addicted to spoiling. Chapter 44-79. Only the 3 of them had this meal. Yi Huan was very happy. She was not sad about leaving home in a few days. Instead, she looked happy. Although she wanted to act like a little boy, she was unwilling to give up the pink bathtub. She soaked in it every night. Yi Huan was already very good at taking care of her, but she was very fragile now. Qin Emo could not bear to let her do it, so he took care of Yi Huan himself. After taking care of the little girl and giving her money, he went back to the study to look for Yi Huan. He allowed her to stay up late on Lunar New Year's Eve. Besides, he wanted to keep her company. They had known each other for many years, but other than the first few years, they were not so good. Later on, she fell in love with Romeo, and the quality of their marriage was terrible. It seemed that they had not gotten along well for so many years. Juan was sitting on the sofa, watching a movie with a laptop in her hand. Mo walked over and sat beside her, naturally holding her in his arms. "Why don't you watch it in the living room? Won't your neck hurt like this? Don't bother, let me down." Juan struggled for a moment, then looked at him. "You're so old, and you're always being intimate. Don't you find it annoying?" Mo's gaze was a little curious. "Mrs. Chen, do you think I'm old?" He grabbed her and looked like he was going to do it on the spot. Juan bit her lip and begged for mercy. "Mo, can you let me watch it properly?" He took the laptop from her hand and studied it for a while. He smiled faintly. "Watch this." At this moment, there was a scene of two women, one older and the other younger, and they were both very pretty. Mo stared at the scene for a few seconds, then his expression became a little incredulous. "Juan, watch this." Juan blushed and wanted to snatch the laptop from his hand, but Mo did not let her. He took the laptop for himself and watched the scene from beginning to end. It was a pity that it was just a scene. Then, the story ended. Mo turned off the laptop. Juan snatched it over and said, "I want to watch something else. It's Chinese New Year's Eve, and you're going to ignore me like this." Mo murmured. Juan bit her lip. After a while, she said in a low voice, "Are we going to set off fireworks?" She knew that there were still some in the trunk. Mo kissed her cheek. "Think of something else." Juan noticed that there was something wrong with his gaze and shrank towards the other end of the sofa. "No. You don't dare to think about it, or you don't want to think about it." He leaned in and kissed her. "Mrs. Chen, don't be lazy." Juan rested her chin on the back of the sofa. After a while, she whispered, "I'm a little tired." Mo put down his hand on her shoulder and smiled, "Let's watch TV together." With that, he pulled her into the living room to play the Spring Festival Gala. Juan was lost for words. Mo. Many of them are celebrities from King Entertainment. Isn't it normal to take a look? Mo chuckled. Juan sat with him and said casually, "I think Suilio is on the Spring Festival Gala too. She's on the same stage as two male idols. You seem to have a lot of opinions about her." Mo pulled her over and pressed her into his arms to warm her up. The heater never seemed to work on her. Her little hands were still cold. Juan put her hands directly into his sweater. It was warm. Mo turned his head and looked at her quietly. Juan snorted. "What opinions can I have? She's your ex-girlfriend." Chapter 4480. She had initially wanted to make a joke, but in the end, she started to mind it and felt a little uncomfortable. Her voice was also not right. After that, she didn't say anything and just sat there quietly to watch the show. Mo felt the change in her mood. He stared at her for a while and said in a relaxed tone, "She's not my ex-girlfriend. I only have one girlfriend, the one with a bad temper and who's hard to deal with." Juan was touched. She didn't want to talk to him, but she still leaned on him. It was a small compromise. But on this New Year's Day, Mo didn't want her to be unhappy, so he turned off the TV. "I'm not watching anymore." Juan was speechless. She stared at him. "What do you want?" Mo said calmly, "A New Year's gift, Mrs. Chen. I gave you lucky money." Juan stared at him for a long time and said in a low voice, "I didn't prepare it. You're not sincere." He bit her cheek. But you can think about what you can give me, tangible or intangible. Chin Mo didn't seem to care. You're so shameless. Huan couldn't stand it anymore. Chin Mo laughed. Men can be prideful outside, but they don't need it at home. He leaned over. His posture was really dangerous. Huan, you haven't told me yet. Tell me what? Huan pretended to be stupid. She took a book and pretended to read it. Chin Mo didn't allow her to escape. He pinched her chin with one hand. Say you love me, or call me husband. Choose one. Huan wanted to put the book on his head, but she didn't dare. She just snorted. Boring and childish. Then she moved away from Chin Mo so that she might escape. He still pinched her chin. Or you'd rather do something else? Of course, there was a deep meaning to it. How could Huan be willing? She stared at him. Then I'll call you husband. But how could she not do it when she was facing him? She stared at him for a long time. Then, Chin Mo sighed and kissed her. He kissed her again and again, and at last she cried out, trembling. This evening was more satisfying than he had expected, even if it was just to be with her. After that, Huan went back to watching horror movies on television. She did not care about the Spring Festival Gala or Suilio. Chin Mo was reading a business magazine by the side. Later on, Huan had a pillow in her hand. Finally, Huan buried her head in his chest and read the magazine. She would occasionally gasp, and at other times, she would hug his waist and scream softly. From time to time, Chin Mo would look at her and chuckle. Occasionally, he would reach out and touch her fluffy hair. By the time they finished watching the movie, it was already 11:30 at night. Huan yawned and said that she was going to bed. Chin Mo held her back. Spend the new year with me. Huan fell onto the sofa again, unable to hide her sleepiness. I'm sleepy. I'll be done in a while. Chin Mo picked her up and walked to the balcony. Fortunately, there was a heater there, but he still thoughtfully put a coat on her. They stood together on the balcony, looking outside. The night sky was cold and sweet. When Huan leaned on his shoulder and was about to fall asleep, the clock rang. It was the ancient 12. Happy New Year, Mrs. Chin. Chin Mo kissed Huan's hair. Then, a champagne-colored rose rose in the night sky. It was fireworks. There will be an update tomorrow. Chapter 4481. Huan tilted her head and looked at Chin Mo. Chin Mo smiled. Do you like it? A custom-made Mrs. Chin. There might be 32 roses. I don't need you to remind me of my age. Huan bit her lower lip and turned her head to look at another champagne rose rising. Any woman would love this. Even Huan couldn't help but let out a gasp of surprise. After a while, she asked him, how did you make this? Chin Mo smiled. You want to know? Huan tilted her head and looked at him. Forget it if you don't want to tell me. After saying that, she went to look at the fireworks again. Although she didn't want to admit it, she was really counting to 1,234. She was looking forward to it, but she didn't want all 32 roses to go up, as if everything would be over once they went up. Chin Mo hugged her from behind and rested his good-looking chin on her shoulder. He said with a smile, from now on, I'll remind you every New Year's Eve, okay? No way, Huan said without hesitation. Chin Mo laughed. Is it because I don't want to remind you how old you are, or you don't want to spend New Year's Eve with me, huh? Huan bit her lip and still looked at the rising fireworks. After a long time, she said in a low voice, I don't want to answer. Chin Mo just smiled and didn't force her. They hugged each other quietly and looked at the dazzling fireworks in the night. Finally, all 32 roses went up, and the sound of police sirens came from outside. Henan said helplessly, "Mr. Chin, the price seems to be a bit high." Chin Mo looked at the police car outside the villa and patted her. "Wait for me here. I'll come up in a while." He had to deal with this kind of thing personally. The servants at home would probably tell the truth. As he said that, he turned around and went downstairs. Huan saw him walking out of the villa and talking to the police outside. He seemed to be having a very pleasant conversation. After about 5 minutes, the police car left. Chin Mo was about to come back. Before he came up, he looked upstairs. Huan didn't want him to think that she was waiting for him, so she went straight to the master bedroom and lay down, pretending to be asleep. She took out her phone and scrolled through something. Chin Mo couldn't find her on the balcony. When he returned to the bedroom, he saw Huan leaning against the headboard and playing with her phone. He walked over and patted her lightly. "Lazy bum, go take a shower." Huan was still scrubbing. Her voice was as soft as a little lamb's. "I don't plan to do anything anyway. I don't want to wash." Chin Mo lowered his head and kissed her. His voice was hoarse. "What do you want me to do, huh?" "Of course not. Go wash yourself." She reached out and pushed him. The pink diamond in her hand was sparkling. Chin Mo grabbed her hand and nibbled it. Then he let her go to the bathroom with a chuckle. Huan was still scrolling through Weibo out of boredom. However, her gaze soon froze. At the beginning of the new year, the trending topics were suffocating. At least, it made Huan feel suffocated. Ranked 8th was #President Chin's remarriage. It was nothing at first. It was just photos of her and Chin Mo's daily life. However, at the end of the article, it was written that President Chin had let bygones be bygones and accepted Director He because of her talent. He didn't care about the fact that she couldn't have another child. He had already sent his only daughter to a boarding school to be trained as his heir. Huan had also been in the entertainment industry for many years. She could tell at a glance that this was written by a bribed gunman, and the person behind it knew a lot. Chapter 4482. Her assistant wasn't good at other things. She was a little silly, but she was very good at writing. Huan only said a few words, however, while she was talking, Chin Mo was already done with his shower. He walked out of the bathroom in his bathrobe and wiped the water droplets off his black hair with a towel. Naturally, he heard what Huan said. Huan looked up. She knew that he heard her, but she lowered her eyes and continued to talk. Chin Mo looked at her and said. After he hung up the phone, Chin Mo tossed the towel in his hand onto the couch and sat on the edge of the bed. He reached out and stroked her hair. "What did Suilio do to offend you? Why did you treat her like this?" He changed the topic. "I know you don't like to meddle in other people's business." Huan waved her phone. "The fact that I can't have children is on the news. Who do you think did it? Most people wouldn't know about it. Women who didn't have any ulterior motives towards Chin Mo wouldn't know that it was Suilio." Chin Mo said in a low voice, "You can do whatever you want. Also, I'll warn her." Although the Su family and the Chin family had a good relationship, it didn't mean that Chin Mo was willing to let his wife be trampled on and hurt in private. Even though it was the new year and it was the middle of the night, Suilio was frozen with just one phone call from President Chin. Even though she was still backstage at the Spring Festival Gala in B City, her assistant had already gotten someone to write a few press releases. They talked about how she was a rare and beautiful female star, how she had a good family background, how she was suitable for rich families, and so on. However, after a call from Chin Mo, Suilyo's career was completely frozen. Her agent didn't sleep in the middle of the night, trying to find out why. However, when the call reached Chin Mo, it was stopped. No one dared to give President Chin's personal number to a small agent. Suilyo had Chin Mo's number, but when she called him, she was blacklisted by Chin Mo. An hour later, an article about Suilyo's dream of being rich replaced the previous one on the hot search list. It was the hardcore one, which surpassed all the other articles on the Spring Festival Gala. It stayed at the top of the hot search list for the whole day. Since KG Entertainment didn't do anything, Suilyo's agent had a rough idea of what was going on. It could only be President Chin's idea. In other words, Suilyo's career was over. She would never be popular again. The company had spent a lot of resources on her in the second half of the year. It was a waste. Chin Mo was angry because of her. As for that beauty, it was obvious that it was Mrs. Chin. Suilyo's agent was a veteran of KG Entertainment and knew that Suilyo would never marry into the Chin family. She only wanted to create a scandal, and President Chin never took her seriously. Didn't a woman know how a man treated a woman? Alright, she's already remarried, and you secretly made such a press release to crush her. Alright, it's all over. Huan's one move will crush you completely, and you won't be able to turn the situation around. The power of the Empress was on full display. Suilyo's agent gave up on Suilyo and let her do whatever she wanted. Suilyo, of course, didn't sleep well that night, so she returned to KG Entertainment. New wife number 1, honey, I'm addicted to spoiling you. Chapter 4483. Suilyo naturally didn't sleep well that night. She returned to King Entertainment and frantically tried to find Huan and Chin Mo. In the end, she had to ask Yi Liangqiu early in the morning to find out where they were. Yi Liangqiu had heard the whole story from her confidant. She didn't say much and only said, let's leave it up to Chin Mo and Huan. She paused for a moment before saying, Miss Su, you are a woman too. You did some things inappropriately. This Miss Su clearly showed Yi Liangqiu's attitude. That was true. Putting her personal feelings aside, Suilyo had gone overboard this time. She was about to hang up. There was nothing more to say. Suilyo hurriedly called out, Auntie. Yi Liangqiu gave her time to say one last sentence. Suilyo hesitated for a moment before asking carefully, Director, he can't give birth. Do you and Uncle mind? Yi Liangqiu's voice was indifferent. It's fine as long as Chin Mo likes her. Besides, they already have Yi Huan, so it doesn't really matter whether she gives birth or not. To say the least, it's meaningless. Chin Mo isn't an only child, so he doesn't feel that much pressure. With that, she sighed and hung up the phone. Actually, she used to like Suilyo quite a bit. She thought she was quite transparent, but in the end, she still couldn't afford to lose. Yi Liangqiu still hung up. Qin Anlin looked at her and she sighed and told him about it. Qin Anlin didn't say anything, but Yi Liangqiu still couldn't let it go. Huan is a little stubborn, but he wouldn't do something so sinister. I was wrong about him. If Chin Mo really, Qin Anlin silently comforted his wife. On the other side of the phone, Suilyo was trembling all over. She naturally knew the consequences of Chin Mo's suppression. Not only her, but also her family's business would be affected, just like the He family, so she had to see Chin Mo to beg him. When Suilyo drove to Chin Mo's villa, she hadn't even removed her makeup. She didn't have the time or energy to care about her appearance. At 8:30 a.m. in the morning, her car arrived at the entrance of the villa. The security guard would not let her in. Su Ilio begged for a long time before he agreed to ask Mr. Chin. Of course, she had to go through the auntie at home. Fortunately, Chin Mo was already up. He was flipping through a magazine in the living room downstairs, as if he knew she was coming. Hearing the auntie's announcement, Chin Mo closed the magazine and said calmly, "Invite her in." The auntie went to inform him. Su Ilio was a little excited and wanted to drive the car in. The auntie immediately said, "Sir said that you can go in alone. Cars are not allowed in." Su Ilio was stunned. Why? The auntie's expression was a little strange. "Because Madam is asleep, Sir is afraid of waking her up, so I can only trouble Miss Su to take a few more steps." Su Ilio's heart was filled with bitterness that she couldn't describe. This was also the most embarrassing time in her life, but she had to grit her teeth and bear with it. Huan had experienced this kind of pain before, but it was actually nothing. She endured the pain and walked into the villa. After entering the entrance, she saw Chin Mo drinking coffee. The sun shone on him, making him look warm and comfortable. Su Ilio hadn't slept the whole night, so she felt cold no matter how warm the place was. She pulled her coat and walked to Chin Mo, President Chin. Chin Mo looked up and looked at her for a while. "You're here so early in the morning to pay New Year's greetings?" Chapter 4484. Su Ilio was naturally embarrassed. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "President Chin, it's my fault. I thought you were here to wish me and Huan a Happy New Year. What's wrong with that?" Chin Mo smiled faintly, but it was a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. Instead, it made people shiver. Su Ilio's voice was bitter. "It's my fault. President Chin can punish me however you want, but can you let my parents off? They didn't do anything wrong." At this point, she already knew Huan's place in Chin Mo's heart. She didn't dare to think too much. But she was still a little indignant. After she finished speaking, Chin Mo's gaze was still indifferent. After a long time, he smiled and said mildly, "Then tell me what you did wrong." This was undoubtedly very embarrassing. Su Ilio closed her eyes slightly. "I shouldn't have gotten someone to write a press release saying that director he can't give birth." As she said this, Chin Mo stared straight at her, not missing a single word. Then he said coldly, "Huan is my wife. What does it have to do with anyone else whether she can give birth or not? Does it have anything to do with you?" He rarely treated women so rudely. At most, he would be a little cold. But now, he was almost impolite. At this point, he wasn't the CEO of King Entertainment making things difficult for a subordinate. He was protecting Huan as a husband and standing up for her. That was all. Su Ilio naturally couldn't say a word. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "Do you love her that much? Do you really not care?" "Yes. I love her. I love her whether she can give birth or not. It has nothing to do with anyone else." Chin Mo clearly didn't want to talk to her anymore. "I won't do anything to your family. They aren't worth my time. But I'll take back all your resources from King Entertainment. That's all. Now, get out." Chin Mo's impoliteness made Su Ilio feel even more embarrassed. She looked up and wanted to say something, but she couldn't because she saw Huan standing quietly at the stairs. Su Ilio wanted to speak, but her throat was dry. In the end, she could only whisper, "I understand, President Chin." She still walked out. After all, she was born into a good family, so she was a little proud. Her back was perfectly straight. Chin Mo could tell from Su Ilio's gaze that Huan had woken up. "Did I wake you up?" He turned sideways. Huan was wearing a nightgown. It was his. It was coffee-colored, and because it was a little too big, it looked a little funny on her. However, it was also a direct blow to Su Ilio, and she couldn't help but leave. Huan slowly walked down and sat beside Chin Mo. She picked up his cup and took a sip of coffee. "It's so bitter." "Black coffee, no sugar," he whispered. Then he took it from her hand and called for the maid to pour hot milk. "I don't want to drink milk," Huan said softly, biting her lip. Chin Mo looked at her fair little face and said again, "Nourishing red beans." "Chin Mo, you are so bad." Huan couldn't stand it anymore. Wasn't he childish? He clearly knew that she didn't like it, but he had bullied her since they were teenagers. He still didn't get tired of it. Huan was speechless. "Chin Mo, today is the new year. Can't you just let me go for a day? Besides, shouldn't we be talking about Su Ilio?" Chapter 4485. Huan looked at him. "Why isn't it important?" "Because of her, people on Weibo said that I'm a hen that doesn't lay eggs. Let me see who's next." Chin Mo's voice carried a hint of a smile. Huan stared at him. Chin Mo reached out and gently stroked her hair. His voice was a little low as he said, "You're not someone who cares so much. Our director, he has always been transparent and doesn't bother about trifles. Why is she so emotional now? Besides, we have Huan. Marrying me would be considered as laying an egg for the Chin family. You're biased." Huan was still staring at him. He smiled. "I've always been biased towards you. I'm glad that you've finally realized it, Mrs. Chin." Huan said slowly, "I was going to kill Su Ilio." Chin Mo held back his laughter and asked in a serious tone. "Mrs. Chin, how are you going to kill her?" He pulled her black hair as he spoke. Huan stared at him. "Of course I have my own way." Relying on my influence. Don't think that I don't know that you've been merciful to her. You didn't want to hurt your family, huh?" Huan snorted. Chin Mo smiled and pulled her into his arms. After a while, he said in a low voice, "Huan, are you concerned about what's written in the press release? If you want a child, we can adopt one." Huan immediately asked, "Can I inherit the family business for Huan?" Chin Mo, on the other hand, answered her seriously, "No." "Then don't adopt one." Huan rejected him directly. She was being unreasonable today, but she was just a little cute. Chin Mo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You want a working machine?" Huan looked at him from head to toe. After a while, she suddenly said, "Then you can exercise every day and work until you're 80. You can wait for the next generation to inherit the family business." Chin Mo looked at his wife in disbelief. After a while, he pulled her into his arms and touched her hair with his chin. "Don't you care about me at all?" "Not at all," Huan said resolutely. From the corner of his eyes, Chin Mo saw the auntie coming over with a glass of something, so he smiled and said, "If you really don't feel bad, then I won't feel bad for you either." As he spoke, he took the cup of red beans and took a sip. Very fragrant. Huan looked at Hongdo with a bitter expression. "I refuse." Chin Mo's voice was low. "There's no point in refusing, because I don't feel sorry for you." Huan wanted to run, but he held her down and fed her. Huan really didn't want to recall the entire process. The main thing was that Auntie was here. If she didn't listen to him, he would personally feed her. After Hehuan finished eating, she went upstairs. After a while, Qin Mo heard the sound of vomiting coming from upstairs. His heart tightened and he immediately went upstairs to the bathroom. Hehuan had indeed vomited. Qin Mo patted her back and said gently, "It's my fault. I won't force you to eat next time." Hehuan was in so much pain that his voice was light. "It's too late." She covered her mouth and glared at him. "I'm not eating any more in the future." At that moment, Qin Mo was still taking care of her and had to coax her well. Finally, she wasn't angry anymore. However, after she calmed down, Qin Mo still mumbled, "Go to the hospital for a checkup." "What if you're pregnant?" Hehuan was stunned for a moment before she said firmly, "I just vomited from eating red beans. I won't get pregnant." However, Qin Mo was insistent. He was afraid that she might really get pregnant. After all, Qin Chen had said that Hehuan's body couldn't handle childbirth, not even pregnancy. Since he cared about her so much, he naturally had to get rid of that little bit of doubt in his heart. Chapter 4486. Qin Mo stared at her for a while before whispering, "I'm worried. Let's go to the hospital." Hehuan bit her lip and said impatiently, "Qin Mo, you're so annoying." She gave him a shove because she was impatient. Qin Mo grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms. Hehuan couldn't escape and looked like she was about to throw a tantrum. "Qin Mo, let go of me. I don't want to go to the hospital." He didn't let go and held her in his arms in a strong and masculine manner. Hehuan couldn't move and could only stare at him. Qin Mo said in a low voice, "Are you going to listen to your brother?" Hehuan froze for a moment at the way he addressed her. She recalled that when they were very young, she used to follow behind him and call him Brother Qin Mo. Later, he asked her to call him brother and omitted the word Qin Mo. She had been calling him brother for several years until her period came. After they stayed in a hotel for one night, Qin Mo didn't allow her to call him brother anymore. Sometimes, she also felt that he was quite fickle, changing all the time. He called him brother one moment and Qin Mo the next. They were an old couple now, but he still called him brother. Hehuan bit her lower lip gently and said, "I'm not brother." "Then what is it?" There was a hint of a smile in Qin Mo's eyes and his eyes were burning. Hehuan pushed him. "Put me down. It's uncomfortable to hold me like this. I want to vomit again." Qin Mo's voice was a little low. "I'll take you to the hospital. Don't refuse." After saying that, he carried her back to the bedroom and sat on the bed. He went to get her clothes and put them on. There were 3 layers of clothes, so it was useless for Hehuan to protest. Qin Mo also changed his clothes and said calmly, "We'll have breakfast later." Hehuan wanted to say something, but it was useless. He took her downstairs and asked the nanny to take care of Hehuan. The little girl was going to get up soon. When they got into the car, Hehuan tilted her head and looked at Qin Mo, "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. I really just threw up. I'm not pregnant." Besides, Qin Mo was fastening his seatbelt when he heard her pause. He turned his head and asked, "What are you talking about?" Hehuan blushed a little. Qin Mo revealed a faint smile. "Besides, I have been taking precautions all along, haven't I?" Hehuan's face turned even redder. She bit her lip and glared at him. Qin Mo laughed. "Why, are you embarrassed?" Hehuan's face was still very red. He quietly admired it for a while and reached out to touch her face. "You better not be pregnant. Otherwise, it's my fault." As he spoke, his voice became hoarse and gentle. Even Huan, who was used to living with him, felt that Qin Mo was especially gentle at this moment. But she also knew that while he was gentle now, he could be particularly hateful at critical moments. Huan sat up straight. She knew that she couldn't escape, so she said softly, "You drive. Don't look." Qin Mo smiled gently and then started the car. When they went to the hospital, it was naturally a mistake. Huan just ate red beans, not pregnant. The doctor prescribed some medicine to protect her stomach and scolded Qin Mo as he prescribed it. "Don't force her to eat something she doesn't like. She's already married, so there's no need to be so wicked. Don't bully her so much." Even though Qin Mo was thick-skinned, he still blushed slightly and said nothing in the end. When they left the hospital, he pulled Huan along with him. Chapter 4487. Sitting in the car, he took the medicine and looked at it for a while before putting it down. He looked up and asked her, "Do you still feel uncomfortable?" Huan shook her head. "I'm fine." Qin Mo rubbed her hair and started the car. The car slowly drove back to the villa. It was already 11 o'clock, and it would be lunchtime soon. Yiliangqiu had called and asked them to go to the Qiu garden for lunch. Huan took the medicine and looked very reluctant. Qin Mo poured her a glass of water and looked at her. "You don't want to take the medicine." Huan held the glass of water and looked at the medicine silently. Then she gently rubbed it with her fingers and murmured, "Don't you think I've been taking medicine since we got together? Miscarriage, fever, cold, and now..." Qin Mo's heart ached. He went over and hugged her gently. "It's my fault. I won't force you to take it next time." After a pause, he coaxed her again. "Be a good girl and take the medicine." Huan also felt uncomfortable, but she still took the medicine, although it was a little bitter. After she finished, her little face was wrinkled and especially small and fair. Qin Mo couldn't help but kiss her again. Huan glared at him. She was already like this, and he still didn't behave. Qin Mo pinched her little face with one hand and took a stack of snacks with the other hand. "Eat some. It will take at least an hour to eat at my parents' place. There's no sugar for this." Huan's mouth was very picky. She was only willing to take a small bite to make sure there was no problem before she was willing to eat a little bit. Every time she was picky, Qin Mo would have a feeling that she was hard to raise, even harder than Huan. Qin Mo's eyes were fixed on her, and there was a touch of affection in his eyes that couldn't be concealed. In fact, he liked her like this, the way she needed him to take care of her. However, he still restrained himself. He just waited for her to eat and drove to the Qiu garden with Huan. The atmosphere in the Qiu garden was even more intense. All the children of the Qin family except Yi Muyun had returned. Qin Mu and Qin Qin came back with their children. Little Huan also had a playmate, but she was the youngest among them, so she was also very pampered. While they were waiting for the meal, Huan watched the children play and smiled. Qin Mu rarely interacted with Huan, and it was rare for them to get together. However, they often played together when they were young, and their personalities were more compatible. After all, Qin Chen had always been a boy since he was young. Qin Mu handed a cup of hot fruit tea to Huan. "Second brother asked me to give it to you." Huan took it and subconsciously looked in Qin Mo's direction. He was talking to Lan Yu and seemed to be having a good time, while Zhou Chongguang was smiling at the side. The scene of three handsome men together was very pleasing to the eye, and Huan also took a second look. Meanwhile, Qin Mo's gaze swept over to them with a meaningful look in his eyes. There was also an inexplicable smile on his face, which was quite meaningful. Huan immediately turned her head away, refusing to look at him. Who wanted to look at him? Her awkward look seemed to please him. Qin Mo chuckled and then continued to talk with Lan Yu and Zhou Chongguang about the market. Naturally, he was mature and charming. Qin Mu smiled beside Huan. Second sister-in-law, you and second brother seem to have a good relationship now. Huan withdrew her gaze and looked at Qin Mu. Where? Even a blind person can feel it. It was rare for Qin Mu to be so rude. Your adultery can't stop it. Huan frowned. Qin Mo and I are legally married. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.